Today we're going to talk about slope-intercept form. That is y is equal to mx plus b. And that's where m is our slope, which we've talked a lot about. And b is our y-intercept. And that is where, and oops, I can't spell today, intercept. And that is where the line crosses the y-axis. That's what intercept means. Okay. So here we have a graph. And let's say we have y is equal to 2x plus 4. And basically this means that the slope is 2. That means that line goes up 2 and over 1. It's going to be positive, and it's going to intercept the y-intercept. This is y, and this is x at 4. And so if we're making a chart, I know that if x is 0, y is going to be 4. And you can double check that if you want. 2 times 0 plus 4 does give us that y equals 4. So that's right. So if I'm graphing this, I'm going to go ahead and put a dot right there at 0, 4. So we already talked about the slope is going to be 2 over 1. But let's pretend that we weren't really sure how that works. Here I'm just going to put in a -1 for x, and I'm going to do that. 2, if x is -1, plus 4, this would equal a -2 plus a positive 4. So this is going to give me that y is equal to a positive 2. So that is my other point for my line. And if I'm going to graph that, I'm going to go -1 up 2 and put a dot right here. And that, whoops, is a horrible looking line. Let's try that again. And that is my line. So here we have slope-intercept form. We have our table. And then we have the graph of our line, and they are all saying the exact same thing. Let's do one that's a little bit more challenging. Let's say y is equal to 3 over 2x minus 1. So again, we have our table. So if x is 0, y is -1. If you're not sure about that, you can actually do the problem. We know that anything times 0 is 0, so 0 minus 1 is equal to y, and you have to remember that that's a -1. So therefore y is -1. Let's go ahead and again, these are not perfect, so your graph paper, you're going to have a better graph than I have here. So we're going to go to 0, -1, and here is going to be 1 point on our line, and that's our y-intercept right there. Now this x, the next point, I'm going to pick a 2. So I'm going to do 3 over 2 times 2 over 1 minus 1. 3 times 2, you're going to multiply across the top. I'll do that over here in case you forgot. So you do 3 over 2 times 2 over 1. You go 3 times 2 is 6. And then you do 2 times 1 is 2. And then you divide that. 6 divided by 2 is going to give us a 3. So this next step would be a positive 3 minus 1 gives us a positive 2. So my other point for this line should be at positive 2, positive 2. So I'm going to go over 2 and up 2, and here's where my dot goes. And now I have a line, and there we go again. We have a graph, and our table and our equation all say the same thing. Let's try one with a negative slope. Actually, let's do that. Okay, so y is equal to negative 3 plus 2. Okay, here's our table again. Sorry, my y did not look like a y. That's not much better. Okay, anyway, so negative 3x plus 2. So if we do x is 0, we know that y is 2. And if you really have to do the math, go ahead and do it. It's negative 3, and you have a 0 plus 2 is going to give us a positive 2. So hopefully you've figured that out by now without actually having to do the math. So let's go ahead and put some marks on our graph here. And we have a 0, positive 2, and that goes right there. Now remember that a negative slope goes this way, so that's what I'm looking for. So here I'm just going to go ahead and say that x is 1, because that's easy. And if I do negative 3 times 1 plus 2, I get negative 3 plus a positive 2, and that equals a negative 1, because this negative 3 has a greater absolute value. So that means my answer is going to be negative. So then I'm just going to go positive 1, negative 1, and that is my line. And again, I have, here, let's erase some of this stuff that's in the way. But again, I have my equation and my graph and my table all say the same thing. So I'm going to give you some practice problems now to try, and I want you to do the same exact thing. Make a table, make an equation, and draw the graph. Okay? Number 1 is going to be y is equal to 1/3 x minus 2. Number 2 is going to be y is equal to negative 4x plus 3. Okay, so these are the 2 examples that I need you to do for homework, and they will be due at the beginning of our next class period. Please email me if you have any questions.